Good morning. It's Tuesday, April 5th. Congratulations to the Jayhawks. I want to talk about pricing pots. This came up for me yesterday because I completed a commission, got it successfully delivered, um, and we'd agreed on a price, and we were talking about what the total was and so forth and so on. But for many potters starting out, or people who want to be potters, that transition to selling their pots is made extra difficult by the need to price your work. uh, and it can be a complicated process and potentially more complicated than is helpful. So, one approach is simply to check out what's current in your market, so to speak. So go to some local fairs where you might conceivably sell your work, and let's say you make a standard cup like this, and you go around and you see what other potters are selling them for. And then you decide. You look at their work and you look at your work and you decide, how your work fits in. Is it just as good? Is it not quite as good? It's a little silly for you to price your work higher than theirs if you and everybody else knows that the quality doesn't justify it. But you can also get in trouble selling your work much too cheaply. And by trouble, I mean you're part of a community of potters, and you don't all need to be best buddies, but you also don't want to create price wars or somehow imply that their prices are too high, or, as they say, lower the tone of any particular fair or so forth. Okay, so that's community-based pricing. And it has a lot of advantages. It is polite, and it lets other people do the heavy lifting in terms of thinking through what's going on. You'll notice I'm not going to be talking anything about what your costs to produce are. That's a whole different business issue. Ideally, of course, if you're going to continue in business, you need to pay less to make the item than you sell it for. But how much less, that's a whole nother conversation. So we covered that, the community issue. But there's a more fundamental one, and this is one I work on myself, and that is your own emotional issues. So years ago, what I came up with was pricing at 5, 10, 15, 20, so forth. I decided, even way back then, that a single dollar here or there wasn't worth my agonizing. And it is hard to tell the difference between a $6 item and an $8 item, and it's much easier if you're trying to decide if something is a $5 item or a $10 item. Okay, so to begin, this is one of my little whiskey cups, so I'll put it there if I see. Okay. Now, in this case, it was wood-fired, which adds to the cost, at least to me. So, but it's small, and I can make them pretty quickly, throw them off the hump. It does have a trimmed foot ring. But for a regular one, I would think of this as my bottom-of-the-line offer, or item. So, because it's wood-fired, it's $10, but if it weren't wood-fired, it'd be $5. And if someone comes up to me and asks, would you take 3 for it? It's pretty easy for me to say no. Okay. Then you work up. What's larger? What takes more time? Okay, so here's a smallish bowl. Again, it's got a trimmed foot ring. That takes some time. It's got a bit of decoration and so forth, but it's not a lot of clay and it's not a lot of space in the kiln. Okay, so maybe it's a $10 item, except I gave it a handle. Okay, that's extra time, extra clay, extra trouble, extra expertise, because not everybody knows how to do this. Um, so, so maybe what I've done is I've taken a $10 item and turned it into a $15 or a $20 item. Okay. I mentioned the mug. Okay. So, a $20 item based on size and time it takes to make, space in the kiln. Except, I then took some extra time, decorating time. And I've got to decide for myself emotionally, does it piss me off to sell a decorated item at the same price as an undecorated item? And I think maybe it does. So maybe that becomes a $25. Maybe not. This was particularly time consuming, a couple of steps. Decorating like this is less time consuming. I just had some black wax resist in a bulb. It doesn't look as fancy. That makes sense. But based on size, this would be one of my $25 mugs. And it might, because of that, become a $30 mug. And again, not all of mine have a trimmed foot ring, but that adds to time and trouble. And the time issue cuts into how many you can make, because you only have so many hours in a day. So if you're spending more time per pot, for instance, doing that stuff, you're getting fewer pots done. Okay. That doesn't have to ruin your bottom line, but I think you have to calculate it into the emotional cost of the item. Anyway, it's basically emotional. I mean, the school of business wants it to be otherwise, but as working artists, pricing your work is emotional. And there are issues of community, who you're selling it to, who your booth is next to when you're selling, things like that. But at the end of the day, you have to be happy for the results. And those results are in the cash box. So, have a good day.